Today we're going to be talking about creative inquiry and developing your powers of observation for use in research, science, um, and many other things that you might do as you move forward in your career. I developed this PowerPoint after being a teacher ranger teacher at Agate Springs National Monument in the northwest corner of Nebraska. Agate is a convergence of different opportunities for science, for literature, for art, for culture that a lot of people don't know about. It is the site of a ranch owned by the Cook family for many, many years. When Cook and his new bride were out courting, riding around, actually before they got married, they discovered that at two hills close to the ranch owned by, at the time, Cook's fiance's father, they found old bones sticking out of the side of the hill. It turned out this was a massive find from the Miocene era. The bones were transported eventually from the northwest corner of Nebraska all over the United States. It's a large bone bed with a mass that is rarely seen for that type of evidence. This northwest corner of Nebraska is also the site of several important wars between the Native Americans and the settlers in the West. It is the spot near where the Niobrara starts, just a little bit farther northwest of there. It is a spot where the Cook family ranched for many years, helped put roads in. It is a convergence of many of the different historical moments in our history, particularly from about 1848 to about 1965. So I'm going to use some of the resources from there to show you how field notes and scientific inquiry outside, even without all the technology, can be very useful. So the first thing we're going to talk about is observation, but our creative inquiry is a three-step process, and you'll find this is fairly similar to scientific inquiry. So we're going to start with observation and description. This is our data collection process, but when you're talking about field notes, how you describe something and the data that you collect, it's very important to be very specific about your collecting and very consistent over time. And this will allow both you, as you look back over the data, and scientists in the future to use your data to understand the processes going on in the world. Second of all, you have to interpret the data. As scientists and researchers, that will be your job. And thirdly, you need to speculate or question. This is sort of the creative part. What's the next step? What can you find from the data that you didn't see before? So we're going to look at description, interpretation, and speculation or questioning. Many times people will start with a question, but obviously in science, we're always questioning. It's always both the beginning and the end of our process. So when we're talking about field notes, we're talking qualitative data collected by researchers. It's evidence from the field, sometimes in the form of maps, illustrations, graphs, or short sentences. Here are a couple of examples of key field notes from the history of both the country and science. So the one on the left is some of Lewis and Clark's field notes from the expedition in 1804-05 to look at the Louisiana Purchase that covered much of the eastern edge of Nebraska. On the right, you can see field notes from Charles Darwin as he began to look to pull together his Origin of Species book. I think it's fantastic that the top two lines are "I think," but then you can see his outline of Origin of Species, which and natural selection, which we all know and understand is a cornerstone of scientific thought, was not something that maybe is an artistic masterpiece, but is just enough that he understands and can remember what he's thinking about. So I don't expect you all to be artists and sketch amazingly. I just expect you to come up with a system that allows you to understand what you've done in the field when you bring it back to the classroom. As part of this class and as part of our inquiry and development of vocabulary and description, and to knock down some of the issues people have with having to maybe be perfect the first time, we are going to do some writing practice. And I love this quote from John Talmadge. Writing is a deliberate but largely unconscious act. Words and ideas originate in the subconscious and are brought to the surface by noting them down. Imagination, which is the ability to manipulate reality at a distance by means of symbols, resides in the subconscious and is a survival adaptation of our species. We all have it, and it operates all the time, even when we are asleep. So you are creating even when you are asleep. For me, his quote here frees me to get things down and worry about making them perfect later. So that if I'm creating and I'm thinking all the time, then I need to let go of that ability and just let my writing flow. So we're going to work on that a little bit. In the next few minutes, we're going to do our first free write. Here are the rules. I want you to write for 5 minutes. Somebody set a timer. I want you to write about anything that comes into your head on the subject. It doesn't have to make sense in the moment. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just write. Use complete sentences as much as you can. Don't correct anything as you're going. Get it down on paper. The point is to put the pencil on the paper, get rid of the distractions, put the phones aside, close the computers. I'm serious about that. Just have a piece of paper and a pencil and try your best to keep the pencil going for 5 minutes. Here's your prompt. What color is an apple? I want you to focus on descriptive detail, striving for the right color, not the first to come to mind. Start the timer now.